8 summers of free babysitting. That's what my daughter called Grandma's love. This year, I sent them a bill for $15,000. And you know what? I'm typing this from my new terrace in Tuscany. You don't get to the point of charging your own daughter for watching her children overnight. Not without collecting years of quiet sacrifices, measured in cold dinners, cancelled plans, and birthday cakes eaten alone in the kitchen while everyone else posts their vacation photos. Most people see grandmothers as the heart of the family, a warm place for kids to land when their parents are busy chasing life. But somewhere along the way, my role shifted from cherished to expected, from a grandmother to just free help. The last time they dropped the kids off, I watched their taillights fade and caught my own reflection in the window. Tired, forgotten, holding a pile of tiny shoes and a list of chores. There's a moment, a sharp flicker, when you realize you're not invisible because nobody cares, but because you've been too giving to draw a line. I remember watching the sunrise, the light breaking over distant hills, and thinking, is this really all I am now? Free help? That was the moment something inside me quietly snapped. Not in anger, but in clarity. What does a woman do after 8 summers spent cleaning up after ungrateful family? She does the math. She makes a plan. And she finally puts herself first. But that invoice? That was just the beginning of what I had planned. My name is Margaret, but everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 62, a retired math teacher, and a widow for 3 years now. If you ask the neighbors, they'd say I'm steady as the sunrise, someone who brings cookies to the church bake sale and remembers everyone's birthday. Before my husband passed, I thought we'd spend our golden years traveling, maybe learning Italian together. Instead, my days are filled with sticky handprints, peanut butter sandwiches, and the sharp, sweet giggles of Emma and Jake. Sarah, my only daughter, is 35 and always busy. Her word, not mine. She manages campaigns and people, always one step ahead. But when it comes to the children, she acts as if the world can only spin if I'm holding it steady for her. Her husband, David, works in tech and likes to remind everyone that his time is money. Though mine, it seems, comes free. My grandchildren, Emma and Jake, are the best part of my week. Their innocence makes it easy to forget that somewhere along the way, I became more reliable than loved. When Sarah first asked for help, it was simple. Summer camp was too expensive that year, and the kids needed someone to watch them during the workday. I agreed, happy to be useful, happy to fill my empty house. But one summer became 2, and then 8. Date nights started to show up on my calendar. Always Friday, always just a couple hours. Mom, school holidays? I'd get a text the night before. Can you take the kids? We need to catch up on work. My own plans, book club, painting classes, weekends away with friends. Those melted away, one by one, replaced by childcare reminders and grocery lists. The truth is, I let it happen. I told myself it was just what family does. You could say I still ran my house like a classroom. My calendar was always color-coded, every hour accounted for. But lately, all the color belonged to someone else's schedule. My late husband left me with enough to be comfortable, but I never touched his insurance policy. I thought that would be for something big, something meaningful. I had skills, too. 30 years of teaching and budgeting for a public school gave me a head for numbers. Sometimes, after a long day of childcare, I'd catch myself tallying the hours out of habit, writing little notes on the back of old lesson plans. It was just something to keep my mind sharp. Or so I told myself, year by year. The boundary between helping and being expected blurred, until I couldn't see it at all. At first, the requests came with thank yous and little gifts, homemade cards, a favorite coffee, maybe a photo of the kids. But somewhere along the line, gratitude turned to assumption, and then to entitlement. I can't remember the last time anyone asked if I wanted to help. It just became, Mom, we need you Tuesday. Or Grandma, don't forget you're picking up Jake from soccer. Looking back, I wish I'd noticed sooner how my world had quietly shrunk to fit inside everyone else's. My dreams of travel, of days spent in quiet leisure, became punchlines at family dinners. What else do you have to do? Mom? They'd laugh. I'd laugh too, pretending it didn't sting. But the real truth is this. I didn't realize I was being played until I overheard that phone call. The night I truly woke up started with an overheard phone call. I'll never forget. I was tidying up after dinner, half listening to the soft static of the baby monitor on the kitchen counter, when Sarah's voice floated in from the living room. She was on the phone with a friend, her laughter bright and unburdened, the way it always was when I was the one taking care of her children. Oh, Mom, she's just free help. Loves spending time with the kids anyway. We save thousands on childcare. David's voice piped up in the background. Casual. Dismissive. Your mom's retired. What else is she gonna do? Those words hit harder than I could have imagined. I stood there, coffee cup shaking in my hand, the room suddenly shrinking around me. I watched the steam fade as I realized what I'd known. Deep down, for a long time, my love had become their convenience. The worst part wasn't the money. It was the easy way my name had become shorthand for nothing better to do. That moment, I remembered all the little slights I'd brushed aside. Never asked. Always told. Mom, we need you Tuesday. As if my own schedule didn't matter. Rescheduling my doctor appointments because Sarah's team had a last-minute meeting. Canceling my own weekend away when they decided the kids would miss Grandma too much. There were the Christmas gifts. The world's best babysitter mug, wrapped with a ribbon. The irony stinging sharper than any thoughtless remark. I started replaying it all in my head. The so-called emergencies that turned out to be spa weekends for Sarah and David. Not a work crisis as claimed. Watching the kids while running a fever, bundled in blankets and trying not to let the children see me shiver. Missing book club, painting class, even my grief counseling group, quietly, because my family needed me more. Every time I tried to put myself first, there was another text, another just one more favor, another reason my life could wait. The final straw landed on a night that should have been joyful. Sarah got a big promotion, the one she'd worked years for, and I was so proud I baked her favorite cake. That night, instead of raising a glass in celebration, I was back in my kitchen, washing dishes, tucking the kids into bed, answering her texts at midnight. Kids are asleep. Dishes done. Thanks, Mom. There was no invitation to the party, no moment of pride, just another invisible night alone. That night, for the first time since losing my husband, I felt a different kind of grief. It wasn't just for the man I'd lost, but for the woman I'd become. Someone who quietly accepted less and less, year after year, until I was little more than a shadow on the edge of my own life. I sat at the kitchen table long after midnight, the house silent but for the steady tick of the old clock. For a long time, I let myself feel the weight of it all, the loneliness, the regret, The quiet ache of a life spent waiting for gratitude that never came. I realized I was grieving two losses, my husband and my own identity. But as the hours slipped by, something inside me shifted. I stopped telling myself it was okay, that this was just what grandmothers do. Instead, I thought about all those years in the classroom, all the budgets I'd balanced, all the times I'd taught kids to stand up for themselves. I realized that being understanding didn't mean letting myself be used. That night, I pulled out my old calculator and started adding numbers. What I discovered made my blood run cold. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Keep listening. This gets interesting. I'd always been good with numbers. 30 years teaching high school math, running the department, balancing school budgets that never quite stretched far enough. I could turn a stack of lunch receipts and field trip slips into something logical, something that made sense on paper. So, when I started adding up the years I'd spent babysitting for Sarah and David, it felt oddly familiar. Only this time, the numbers told a story I'd never wanted to face. 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 12 weeks, each summer. That's 480 hours. Just for one summer. Our neighborhood isn't cheap. Local babysitters charge $18 an hour. More for 2 kids. Multiply it out. 8 summers, 480 hours, times $18. And the number on my page made my breath catch. $69,120. That didn't even count the extra days, the holidays, the weekends, or the countless hours spent making meals, cleaning up, or ferrying the kids to soccer and piano. I started searching for professional childcare rates in our zip code, and what I found was even more sobering. Nanny services charge $25, even $30 an hour for 2 kids, plus extra for any meal prep or after-hours care. It was a 6-figure job they'd gotten from me, year after year, with nothing more than a quick thanks. Mom in a mug at Christmas. The more I dug, the more I saw my own life receding in the rearview. Missed book club meetings, cancelled painting classes, opportunities that slipped by quietly while I was busy being useful. I realized how much of my own retirement had been spent holding up someone else's world, while mine sat quietly on the shelf, untouched. That's when Emily stepped in. She's my neighbor, a retired lawyer with a sharp eye and a soft spot for women who forget their own worth. We'd grown close since my husband passed. She always seemed to know when I needed a listening ear or a gentle nudge. One evening, after hearing about Sarah's latest emergency and the hours I'd spent rearranging my life, Emily shook her head. "Honey, what you been doing? That's a 6-figure job they've been getting for free," she said, voice equal parts warmth and steel. She asked to see my calculations, and when I handed her the pages, she let out a low whistle. "This isn't just about money, Maggie. This is about your life." It was the first time in years I saw my role with clear eyes. I'd spent so long keeping the peace, smoothing over the rough edges, saying yes to everything, because that's what mothers do. But in doing so, I'd taught my family that my time, my dreams, and even my boundaries didn't matter. Emily's words echoed in my mind. A woman who doesn't value herself teaches others not to value her either. That night, I gathered every email, every text, every calendar entry. I reviewed the messages that assumed, never asked. I made notes, just like I used to draft lesson plans, meticulous and thorough. But this time, the lesson was for me. The anger I thought I'd feel wasn't there. Just a quiet, cold clarity. I wasn't plotting revenge. I was reclaiming respect. I could see now that helping family is a beautiful thing. But there's a line between giving out of love and being taken for granted. The shift inside me was subtle but powerful. I no longer wanted to keep the peace if it meant erasing myself. I wanted something different. Something better. Emily looked at my calculations and whistled low. "Maggie," she said, "you're not just owed money. You're owed your life back. If you've ever realized you were being taken advantage of by family, you know that feeling, the sudden clarity, the quiet resolve. Comment 1, if you've ever had that moment. 2, because this next part is where everything truly changes. From that moment forward, I stopped thinking of myself as a victim and started acting like the professional I once was. Years of teaching and running a school department had given me more than patience with children. It gave me systems, discipline, and the kind of backbone you need when you're surrounded by entitled parents and stubborn school boards. This time, I was applying those same skills to my own family. I opened my laptop, pulled up an empty spreadsheet, and started building my case line by line. Every date I'd watched Emma and Jake, every overnight, every day spent on call for a sudden work crisis. I detailed the hours, the types of care provided, childcare, meal prep, school pickups and drop-offs, sick days, even the nights I stayed late so Sarah and David could have a break. For every entry, I attached a screenshot, a text demanding my time, a calendar event where I'd canceled my own doctor's appointment, a receipt for last-minute groceries. I even included the coloring books, snacks, and supplies I'd bought out of pocket, never expecting a penny in return. I made calls to local nanny agencies, gathering facts like I was preparing for an audit. What did they charge per hour for 2 kids? What about holiday rates or late-night availability? I researched the going rate for family assistants, women like me who did the invisible work that made other people's lives easier. I calculated what I'd missed, the book clubs, the art classes, the lunches with friends, and the potential income I could have earned if I'd chosen to tutor or substitute teach instead. The invoice itself was professional, printed on letterhead with my name at the top, just like the reports I used to submit to the school board. Each line item had a description: childcare, meal preparation, transportation, emergency availability. Payment terms were clear: 30 days, with late fees outlined at the bottom. I CC'd both Sarah and David. No room for confusion or pretending it hadn't arrived. As I worked, I kept reminding myself I wasn't trying to hurt my daughter or ruin our relationship. I wanted to teach her something she'd never learned from all those years of being mothered, that a woman's time, her care, and her presence are valuable. I thought of Emma, my granddaughter, and wondered what kind of example I was setting for her. If I didn't speak up, Emily became my sounding board, my quiet coach in the background. "You're not being mean. You're being clear," she told me, more than once. We rehearsed the conversation at her kitchen table, role-playing every possible reaction: guilt, anger, tears, negotiation. I practiced saying, "This isn't a negotiation, it's a notification," until the words felt natural in my mouth. Timing was everything. I chose a Sunday family dinner, when everyone would be together and there would be no easy exit. My kitchen table, my turf. I set out plates, poured coffee, tried to keep my nerves in check. I knew there'd be pushback. Sarah's wounded confusion, David's attempts at negotiation, maybe even a few guilt trips. But this time, I was ready. The morning I planned to present the invoice, Sarah called with another emergency babysitting request. Perfect timing. I took a deep breath, straightened the stack of papers on my kitchen counter, and thought, this is the day I reclaim my worth. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is draw a line and stand by it. And sometimes, teaching your family how to value you means showing them, with absolute clarity, what that value really looks like. What came next would change everything. Not just for me, but for everyone at that table. Sarah called late that Friday afternoon, her voice brisk and hurried. Mom, I'm so sorry for the short notice, but we have this last-minute business dinner. Could you please keep the kids tonight? We'll pick them up after. My answer came gently, almost playful. Of course, dear. We'll discuss my rates when you pick them up. For the first time. There was a pause. Real confusion. A silence I hadn't heard from her in years. She covered it with a quick, thanks. Mom. And hung up. That evening, Emma and Jake ran through my door, all sunshine and stories. I gave them their favorite snacks, played the games they loved, tucked them in just like always. They were innocent, untouched by the currents shifting between adults. On the kitchen counter, in plain sight, sat the envelope I had prepared, the invoice, printed and sealed, waiting for the moment of truth. When Sarah and David arrived to collect their kids, I greeted them with warmth, poured coffee, and asked about their dinner. Then, as naturally as if I were passing the salt, I handed Sarah the envelope and said, I've been thinking about our arrangement. She opened it, and for a moment, there was nothing but the soft tick of the wall clock. Sarah's eyebrows drew together. Mom, what is this? David snorted, waving a dismissive hand. Very funny. Maggie. Put that away. But I kept my seat, voice steady. Exactly what it looks like. A bill for services rendered. Every hour, every meal, every late night. 8 years of it. The confusion shifted to irritation. You can't be serious, Sarah said, her tone tight. I met her gaze, calm and unyielding. I'm completely serious. I've undervalued my services for 8 years. That ends now. David's expression hardened. We never agreed to pay. This is ridiculous. I held his stare. You never asked. You assumed. What's really ridiculous is 480 hours of unpaid work per summer, plus every holiday, every last-minute emergency. Sarah tried to pivot, her voice softer, more pleading. But you love spending time with them. They're your grandchildren. I nodded. I do love them. That's separate from being financially exploited. Love doesn't mean sacrificing my entire life for someone else's convenience. I slid the documentation across the table. Spreadsheets, market research, texts, calendar entries, receipts, opportunity costs. It was impossible to wave away. The facts sat between us, heavy and irrefutable. David tried a different tack, a tone I recognized from boardroom negotiations. This isn't how families operate. We help each other. I took a slow breath, never raising my voice. Families do help each other, but help is asked for and appreciated. This was expected and taken for granted. There's a difference. The tension built, but I didn't flinch. I stayed seated, my hands folded, my posture relaxed. They stood, shifting, voices louder. But I was the one who set the tone. For once, the narrative belonged to me. Sarah's expression shifted. Something between confusion and awe. She stared at me like she was seeing her mother for the first time in years. Mom, she said quietly. You've changed. I smiled gently. No, honey. I've finally woken up. Have you ever had to teach someone your worth? Let me know in the comments. Because sometimes, the hardest lessons are the ones closest to home. And this lesson, for all of us, was just beginning. I could see the shift in Sarah's eyes even before the tears started. It was the old playbook. Turn up the emotion. Try to remind me that I was needed, that I'd always enjoyed being the heart of the family. I thought you liked helping. Mom, you always said you loved spending time with them. Her voice trembled, reaching for the familiar thread of guilt. I leaned in, steady. I did enjoy helping, but I didn't enjoy being taken for granted. There's a difference. Sarah. David's frustration took a different angle, his voice louder. Families don't charge each other. Maggie. This is how families fall apart, when people start putting price tags on love. He tried to draw a line in the sand, hoping I'd back down at the word family. I didn't. Family respects family. Family doesn't exploit family. There's no price on love, but there is on labor, and love without respect turns into resentment. I want to see the kids because I love them, not because it's convenient for you. The words hung in the air, raw and new. Then, Sarah tried a new tactic, the one that hurt most. Emma asked why Grandma doesn't want to see her anymore. It was the knife to my heart. The grandchildren caught in the middle. My voice softened. I want to see them. Always. But not when my time is treated like something you can simply claim. Not when my yes is the only answer you'll accept. I want to be part of their lives, not just the background help. I pulled out the timeline I'd created, sliding it across the table. Look at this. Look at how the requests became demands. How my no was never taken seriously. How my own life disappeared bit by bit. Every appointment rescheduled. Every vacation cancelled. Every time I tried to say I couldn't. And you pushed until I did. David tried logic, tallying the family budget. We help you all the time. Maggie, we buy groceries. We pay for streaming. You never have to worry about money. I kept my gaze gentle, but unwavering. You eat out twice a week, $160. Your gym membership is $150 a month. Your Netflix, Spotify, premium everything, $200. But paying Grandma for years of work? That's where you draw the line? Silence filled the kitchen. Then I laid out the choices. Here's what I propose. Pay the invoice in full, and we move forward, with boundaries and respect. Partial payment? I'll help. But it's at my rate and my schedule. No payment? I won't provide free childcare anymore. Holidays only. Just like any other grandparent. I'm not shutting you out. But I'm no longer running my life on your schedule. They had arrived expecting to shame me back into compliance, to use family ties as leverage. But now, the conversation had flipped. Suddenly they were facing a business proposition they couldn't ignore. I wasn't the silent, reliable fixture anymore. I was someone with terms. Sarah, desperate, reached for the last weapon. What would Dad think about all this? He never put himself first. He always said family comes first. The hurt flared inside me. But I met her eyes. Your father would be proud that I finally stood up for myself. He always said I was too generous for my own good. He wanted me to find my voice. And I finally have. And then, with quiet force, I played the final card. By the way, I've kept every text, every late-night call, every canceled plan. Emily, my lawyer friend, says I could file for retroactive payment. But I'm not here to fight. I'm offering you family rates, as they gathered their things to leave. David muttered, "Your mom's lost her mind." But through the window, I watched Sarah stop him at the car. She didn't look angry, just shaken. Maybe even a little hopeful. "No," she said quietly. I think she found it. And right then, I knew I wasn't just reclaiming money or time. I was reclaiming myself. It was the 29th day, almost midnight, when I found the envelope in my mailbox. My hands trembled as I slid it open, half expecting a fight, half bracing for disappointment. Inside was a check, not for the full amount, but enough to make me pause, enough to feel the first, true shift. The note with it was short. We didn't realize. "Let's talk about going forward." It wasn't a victory I'd ever imagined for myself. I wasn't counting on an apology. But in its own way, that note said more than any bouquet or gift ever could. It said they saw me. It said they were willing to try. The next morning, I did what I'd put off for years. I booked a flight to Italy and reserved a small villa in Tuscany, the one with the climbing roses on the stone terrace. 2 months. Just for me. I wasn't running away. I was claiming the life I'd shelved, page by page, for everyone else. The payment didn't feel like revenge money. It felt like a key, unlocking a door I'd almost forgotten existed. While I packed, Sarah called. Her voice was softer, more careful. She asked if I'd come back to babysit. But this time, she offered to pay. "I'm sorry we took you for granted." "Mom," she said. "David," in the background, managed a gruff. "You played this perfectly." "Maggie." It wasn't quite warmth, but it was respect. And that was new. Things changed quietly, in small ways that added up. We set clear boundaries. When they needed help, we talked about it, made a plan. Sometimes I said yes, sometimes I said no, and both answers were honored. Our family didn't fall apart. It simply rearranged itself into something better, something more honest. Emma and Jake never really understood the numbers or the conflict. What they noticed was this: Grandma was lighter. I spent real, present time with them. Reading stories, baking bread, teaching them the secret math tricks I once taught my students. One afternoon, Emma looked up at me and said, "Grandma, you seem different, like stronger." She was right. Sitting on the terrace in Tuscany, warm breeze on my face, I finally saw what all those years had been building toward. It was never about the money. It was about reclaiming the wholeness of who I was. A woman, a mother, a teacher, a friend, a grandmother. The villa became a symbol, not of revenge, but of self-worth rediscovered. Emily's words echoed on those quiet Tuscan mornings. "You didn't lose a family, Maggie. You gained respect. Sometimes we have to teach people how to love us properly." She was right, too. My grandchildren learned more from watching me stand up for myself than from anything I could have ever told them. Here's what I know now. Love without boundaries isn't kindness. It's slow erasure. Self-respect isn't selfish. It's the greatest gift we can give our family. And it's never too late to change the story, to shift the balance, to become your own person again. So, if you've ever felt taken for granted by your family, know you're not alone. Sometimes the greatest lesson we offer our children is showing them how to value themselves and how to value us. What would you have done in my shoes? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story resonates, I've got another coming soon about a mother-in-law who thought she could control my kitchen. Let's just say she learned otherwise. Sometimes karma doesn't need a passport. Sometimes it just needs a calculator and the courage to use it. As the sun rises over Tuscany, coffee in hand and journal open, I'm not bitter. I'm free. And this is only the beginning.